Go into the shitter and just take the worst dump you've ever heard of in your life.
I mean,
I think he was doing it to make sure he was on the clock.
Yeah, that's just smart. You're making sure you're not late for work,
right?
And you're being courteous to your roommate. And I'm a big believer in pooping on the clock.
Right?
You know what I mean?
What's the old adage? Right? Boss makes $1, I make a dime. That's why I poop on company time.
Yeah,
that's
100%.
Right. And I know Adam was pooping on company time at Barnes & Noble. Yeah. I can assure you that.
Yeah, dude, I had to open the store with the cafe or whatever, and then it was great because the lady that cleaned the bathroom, it'd be like perfectly clean for me to like destroy it like 5 minutes later. So like I didn't have to, because I got to get up in the morning. I didn't get to go before I left. So
no, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. Like at work, I have actually gone in like as the cleaning person is leaving the bathroom, and I just wonder
good day.
Do you feel badly about this? Like you're just watching me go in to just destroy your hard work.
A painter needs a clean canvas.
Yep.
I like how Adam said that. He's like, well, I had to open the store as if like, look, think of the burden I had with a loaded cannon ready to go. I had to open the fucking store.
Like I said, we lived 5 minutes away from this toilet.
I had the whole thing down. It was like you'd start like whatever coffee machine. I would throw the soup in. I'd get everything going. Then like, all right, now I can take a shit. Let's go.
You would throw the soup in, and then he would throw the soup out. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, if you get my drift, yeah.
I just imagine in the half hour leading up to it, you just like start hearing little toots. Like all the kids coming, man. What a way to start a show.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the first official episode of the Text Adventure podcast from the Text Adventure Book Club. This is episode 001. We're aiming high with 3 digits.
I was going to say.
We're going to discuss Good Game, No Rematch, A Life in Video Games by Mike Drucker. I hope everybody listened to our inaugural introduction episode last week-ish, 2 weeks ago. Everybody's here, except we have a rotating chair guest with us. Today we have Adam Marcy. Adam, how is it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me today.
Great. Adam, can you tell us a little bit about your background besides pooping on the company clock at the bookstore?
No, that's about it. Like there really isn't anything to talk about. It's just the life of finding the best public restroom you can at the time.
Line 1 on the resume, huh?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm like George. I don't know if you ever saw like the Curb Your Enthusiasm where they did like the Seinfeld reunion. He made like a fortune off of finding, developing an app that could find the best restroom anywhere in New York City. That's what I strive for. But
so me and Adam worked together with Dan at a Barnes Noble in the early 2000s. That's how we all met. Adam, you read a lot of books. What kind of books do you read? What do you look for when you go to a bookstore?
Yeah, I'm mostly, I'm kind of a little both. I'm a little fiction, a lot of nonfiction history. My dad really got me into like World War II books, of course, like dads tend to do. But no, really anything that is any interest of mine. I'm really into sports and, I like video games. I like collecting baseball cards, stuff like that. Your typical other nerd endeavors like Star Wars stuff. That's my jam usually. But yeah, no, anything that, looks good. And
have you ever read video game books before?
I never really read books about video games. I usually would read like maybe like a novelization of something. I know that on that first episode you were talking about the Mass Effect series. That was a game I really loved, and the writers on those games are really good too. And they started like putting out novels. I know Drew Karpyshyn's like my video game writing idol, I guess you could call it. But no, I would read like novelizations of games and things like that. I read a couple. Besides that, there were some Halo novels that came out from that game. So nothing really about video games, but really just more, backstories or continuing stories of current properties and things like that.
Yeah, we talked about Mass Effect Revelations last time, which was written by Drew Karpyshyn. And he was the I don't know if he was the main writer, but he was one of the writers of Knights of the Old Republic and
Yes.
some other Star Wars tie-ins as well.
Yep. Yeah, he wrote the because like they only did the 2 video games, the Night Solar Pie, which are like one of my favorite games of all time, by the way. But they never really finished like what happened with Revan, you know, the main character of the first game, and he wrote a novel a couple years after that that explained like what happened to him and like how him and his friend there got, you know, into like being the Sith Lords, you know, when they came back in the game and stuff like that. So it was actually pretty interesting, but he still kind of left it open ended to, you know, for further stories. But of course, we know how that went with Disney acquiring Star Wars. So who knows?
So we all read Good Game, No Rematch by Mike Drucker. I don't think that this was a perfect book, but I think that this was the perfect book to launch this show with. I think Mike Drucker is our exact age. I think he had a childhood that was a lot like all of our childhoods in some ways. I think that this book kind of touched on a lot of pop culture moments and themes that I think we could all kind of see in ourselves or experienced ourselves, or I think we all played a lot of the games and grew up kind of having the same sort of life at home. I know I did, at least. How do you guys feel about, just in the general sense, about Good Game No Rematch? Do you feel that this was a good launching point for the book club? Did you like the book? Not to get into specifics right away, but how are you guys feeling after reading this? All right, Rock, let's start with you. How are you feeling about Good Game No Rematch?
I started out really liking it. I'm listening to it at work, and I'm literally like laughing out loud, and like other analysts are looking at me like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Started really high at the beginning, really enjoyed it, and honestly, about the midway point, it kind of started to dip down for me, and kind of continued to dip down until we got to the end. I really ended it feeling way cooler on it than I started it.
Pat, how do you feel? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, pretty similar. I mean, I don't know if my feelings dipped towards the end. It's just kind of held steady. I think just like the style doesn't really work with me as much.
I agree. I think that there was because I read it when it came out. I read a preview copy before it came out, maybe like a year ago, and I think that there were some bits. I think the footnotes, and I think some of the chapters that were kind of like expanded tweets, like lists.
Yeah.
I think those were way funnier and impactful reading them, like the just kind of the drollness of them. Whereas I think in the audiobook, they came off a little cutesy. I don't know. Adam, how do you feel about that? Adam,
I thought they were.
Did you read or listen?
Yeah, I read it. So,
Okay.
And I think I read probably the same copy that you did, right? The preview
I sent
copy.
you my review copy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I kind of echo the, the same kind of sentiment. I think it was, it started off really well. And I think really what it was like, it was a little bit easier to relate to it, I think, at first. And then as he, continues on, I mean, we know he ended up writing for a lot of like late night comedy shows and things like that. So it kind of, a lot of it didn't seem as like nostalgic to me, and it didn't really, resonate with me as much. So I think like what Rock said, it started out really well, and then it kind of just, but then, yeah, you said like the list that he did. And I was really, a couple of them was, like the one was missing my words here. Oh, the BioShock, pamphlet. Mm-hmm. That was really funny, I thought. So yeah, he kind of like would pepper in a few things here, and those did, like you said, yeah, those kind of came off pretty funny. And I thought those were like a little, good adds to it. But, overall, I enjoyed it. Yeah, definitely started out stronger and coasted to the end, I guess is how I would put it. So
Dan, how you feeling?
I really enjoyed the book. But it's funny, like all the list all the list stuff. I read like the first half a page, and then I tended to skip those. I'm like, this is just a joke. I want to know, like, I want to hear the story. I want to hear his ideas, right? Mm-hmm. But overall, like, I never found it like laugh out loud funny. I think kind of with Pat, the style didn't fully agree with me, but I found it enjoyable. I did a couple of polite chuckles throughout, but I thought it was kind of like what everybody's saying at the beginning. I found a lot to relate to. Yeah.
I found a few bits of it actually laugh out loud funny, but I think there was almost a wave and a crest and a dip and a wave and a crest and a dip of what was funny and what was painfully unfunny. I think that I don't want to trash anybody and say a better editor, but I think a different editing job
Right.
maybe another pass, maybe a little bit of Kutskis
Right.
could have benefited this book in a few different places.
If you don't mind me bringing my day job in here really
Go
quick,
ahead.
I think a good sort of, not rule set, but idea to keep in mind, or for people listening especially, to keep in mind is, what is like actual criticism. For those that don't know, I'm a English teacher at the local university, specifically teaching writing. And
Dan actually made something of himself, despite all of us meeting in a bookstore.
I just had to get 3,000 miles away from you guys. No, when you say the word criticism, or I'm going to critique this, we automatically jump to the negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what actual criticism is. It is much more in line with, what we consider a review, which is to point out, based on our own points of view, our own experiences, and what we bring to every book we read, what we thought worked well, and not necessarily to say it was bad, because none of us have written a fucking book that got published by a major, right? But like to say like, oh, I think this maybe could have been done better or differently, and bring just ideas based on your own experiences and your own point of view to just create conversation around what the book is doing. And I think to that point, what you were pointing out, and kind of what Rock was saying about sort of maybe interest dipping towards the middle and going back up, I think my biggest critique, using that definition, is that I'm not sure that there was a consistency of what Mike wanted this book to be. Mm-hmm. Like, was it biography? Is it like a video game joke book? Is it him talking about how video games have actually created opportunities and skills, for him to use in other areas? Because obviously the nostalgia biography part at the beginning is very profound, and then when we get to the professional life, it gets a bit disjointed. At least it kind of felt like we're just looking at little moments that don't seem to have a lot of connection. Like, I would have loved to have him go in depth more, talking about like how playing video games and maybe making decisions in video games or making quick decisions in games influenced writing pitch packets that he talks about. He talks about writing pitch packets. I'm like, oh, he's going to go into it. This is awesome. But then he doesn't really talk about that process. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I would love to see that growth of like just enjoying video games as an escape from his home life as a child to like, oh, video games are actually an important part of how I interact with life. But he never really kind of breaks out of that, especially with the very last chapter, right? He never breaks out of like, oh, video games are mostly just nostalgia for me, even though we can see in the stories he's told, it has influenced every aspect of his life. And I'd love to see more of that.
One of the interesting things is that the author, Mike Drucker, eventually gets a job at Nintendo.
Right.
Which is like, that should be the end all be all of this guy's life.
Right.
It's really a stepping stone, or just a stone.
Yeah.
Maybe he makes some lateral moves from. And it almost seemed as if his entire life of playing games didn't really, at least in the way he presents it, didn't really affect or improve his job at Nintendo. It seemed like, background knowledge of video games maybe helped him in a job interview situation. But I would have liked to have seen, do people at Nintendo actually love Nintendo? Which I think is interesting, because there's a lot of people where you're just selling widgets. It doesn't matter where you work or what you do. It's just kind of your job. And I would like to have seen maybe a little bit more introspection about finally achieving what, seems like a dream job, and maybe it's just ends up being a job. I think that there could have been something there, and there really wasn't.
Right.
I don't know, Pat, how do you feel about the Mike's kind of life of playing video games tying into his jobs? Do you feel like he tied those things in together well, or do you think it was just kind of disjointed?
I mean, like, I like the whole concept of the book is kind of neat, but when trying to like fit certain video games into like parts of his life, there are definitely stronger connections than others.
Sure. One of the strongest points, I think, jumping maybe into the middle point of the book, and maybe my favorite point of the book, was the chapter about, it was called The Great StarCraft Conspiracy. I think it was the best thing in the whole book. And it was kind of about the time of Columbine. His little nerd circle, friend group kind of became this pariah to his school simply because they were playing computer games that had people fighting in them. I don't know, Rock, how do you feel about that? I feel like you may have, being a PC gamer and, kind of having grown up in the same time frame, How do you feel about that chapter? I thought it was great.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that chapter was really great. The whole taking us back to that time period of like zero tolerance policies in schools and stuff, and just like uh, kind of as a kid or as a teenager, the feeling that you're in a police state within your school, you know,
Sure.
even if that police state really only consists of a single person. Um,
Hmm.
I just thought it was really interesting that notion that a lot of us, I'm sure, experienced that as a kid or as a teenager, where in an environment in which you have no control, even just one person can make your life hell, even if that person isn't the most powerful person, even if no one else really believes that or listens to that person for long anyway. They can just make your life a living hell just based on essentially just being a misinformed moron. You know, these kids look weird, or these kids have a certain hobby that I don't really know that much about. I don't really care that much about. All I know is it's weird, they're weird, therefore they must be up to no good. And yeah,
100%. When I met Rock, he was a punk rock kid. He had giant hair, plaid pants, Operation Ivy t-shirts. I mean, Rock, you were like the target demographic for.
yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah, absolutely.
Is that true? Is that true?
Yeah, that's 100% true.
100% true.
But no, it's really it made me feel really sad, actually, that chapter, just listening to how these kids were just harried for doing nothing, you know,
Right.
And just this one like dickhead who just like got it in. I think he says in the book, like, this guy thought he was gonna like save the school, you know, from the next shooting, and he just targeted the wrong kids.
And there's a point where a teacher steps on his shoes or a friend's shoes and bends over to polish them and says, "Please don't shoot up the school." Like, what the
Right,
fuck? How are you an
right.
adult saying that to
Yeah.
your child? Like,
And
it's
if I
absolutely
recall,
wild.
if I recall correctly, it kind of ended up destroying their friend group, right? Like people
Yeah,
moved
like
away and stuff. Like,
he said, a lot of his friends were 18. They were able to drop out of school, or kids joined the military, and he never heard from them again. And his whole point was that these kids weren't bad kids. They never even did anything wrong. They just looked weird or different, and they liked, different things. And they were just harassed into, not being in that school anymore, which is absolutely something that I saw in my tiny podunk town. I saw some kids just get harassed for having a trench coat. Like it was the Wild West back then. Of the weird kids were going to do something terrible, and little did we know 25, 30 years later how bad things would actually get.
This is an actually interesting separation point between you and I in our slight age difference, right? So that was 99 Columbine.
Yes.
Is that right? I just turned 47, and it was. So I graduated high school in '98, right? And I was fucking nerd, and I loved Highlander, so I had a long coat, But I was at a junior college when that happened. One thing to be sure, I never wore that fucking coat again. But that's not the tragedy we're actually talking about here. It's like I can't even imagine being in high school when that happened. Obviously, sadly, stuff like that seems to happen on the regular nowadays, but sort of being the first major modern example of a school shooting, like, yeah, I'm sure people were just flailing trying to make any sense out of it. And of course, finding scapegoats is a really powerful way for people to feel better about themselves. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that kind of reminds me is, like, even though I was at a junior college and out of high school, I still really heavily associate a video game with Columbine because I was just so shocked by it. The junior college I went to had 2 arcade machines in the school cafeteria, and I was just playing Samurai Showdown 2 as much as I could, cutting class, and just like I just want to not focus on anything, right? It's funny, like when I think of Samurai Showdown as a series or Samurai Showdown 2, I definitely think of Columbine happening, and it makes me wonder, like, how many sort of historical events I have games associated with them, just to maybe as escape, or just like I was I was playing that when it happened and stuff like that. I'm sure it happens all the time. But maybe not something we can conjure just by thinking about it. But I don't know. I was wondering if anybody has any memories like that, not necessarily with Columbine, but with any kind of event.
Well, Adam, actually, you went into the military right around that time.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I graduated 99, so I was a senior when Columbine happened. So what I remember too, and it really wasn't just Columbine, it was like the 90s, like you said, it was like the Wild West. I mean, that was a wild time for a lot of things. And I remember there were, they were, like you said, they were trying to make scapegoats out of everything. They were trying to blame violence on these violent video games, and there were congressional hearings about having bad words and rap lyrics, and all those things where they're trying to like pin like, oh, you said the F word a lot, and then that's gonna make you I don't know, whatever. But yeah, no, there was a lot of that going on, and then like they're trying to say like, oh, it's violent. Video games are making kids violent. Yet you see, a bunch of cops bludgeoning Rodney King on the news, and you're like, yeah, the video games are the problem. Sure, it was crazy, like absolutely crazy. But the military thing for me was more of just it was kind of out of necessity. Like I didn't really have a direction, and my parents didn't, they couldn't pay for college, and I just didn't want student loans and all this debt when I got out of college, so I just ended up joining the military as well. But it was weird. And I remember like things like Mortal Kombat, and like trying to convince my mom it was okay to rent this game because it was all over the news, and it's like, Mom, I'm not going to go out and like punch my best friend to death because I'm I see some guy doing something in a video game. But it was crazy, just like all that stuff. And there was a lot of really because a few years before Columbine there was the Oklahoma City bombing too. And that was one of those things that they trace back to like these anti-government militia type groups. It's like basically white supremacist, nationalist people are the threats. It's not entertainment properties and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
I mean, the disconnect was just crazy. Like, I mean, even as like a 14, 15-year-old, I'm like, what are they even talking about? I mean, it's just the fear mongering and the scare tactics were just crazy. But
Pat, did you have any sort of trench coat mafia scare in your school? You went to a pretty big school, right?
Yeah, I went to Saratoga.
Yeah, so that's a pretty decent sized school.
Yeah.
Was there any sort of video game scare or any sort of like weird group of kids who were harassed that you remember?
Not that I recall. I probably like junior high. There was a friend of mine. He did wear like a trench coat, and I went to his house after school one day, and like we had set up characters to play Vampire the Masquerade, so we were like attempting to like role play on the way home to his house.
That's the cry for help. Jeez Louise.
Yeah. It didn't actually like amount to anything. I was under the radar. I think he probably got more of it. No, it didn't really. I think maybe even being a bigger school, like just had my own little group of friends. Just like a punk skateboard kid, so
just
everyone left us alone.
Pro skater was going to turn you into a violent kid or whatever.
Right.
One of the things that I think Adam and Dan touched on, satanic panic of video games in the early '90s, with Jack Thompson, Mortal Kombat having blood in it and having digitized characters.
I remember Mortal Monday actually,
100%.
Surprisingly, my mom let me stay home that day. My brother stayed home as well. I think even maybe my younger sister did. And my mom went and bought the game. Like it was a really weird time, I think. It might have been just post-divorce. that may have colored things a bit.
Mortal Monday was literally everywhere. I remember comic books had entire ads on the entire back covers. There was that famous commercial of people just screaming Mortal Kombat. I think even that theme song was like played on Top 40 radio. If you go to play Mortal Kombat 1 now, especially, it's like the most quaint game you've ever seen. Like this little ninja ripping a dude's, spinal column out. Like the fact that people thought that this was going to be the end of fucking civilization is crazy. Yeah. And one of the quotes I pulled out from Good Game No Rematch is Mike Drucker describes going to see Mortal Kombat and saying that it was shocking and gritty and real, the way that all annoying kids confuse something being edgy with being realistic. And I think that absolutely hit the nail on the head. I don't know, Dan, do you remember seeing Mortal Kombat for the first time? Do you think that it was shocking to you as a kid?
It was definitely shocking. I don't know if I remember seeing it in the arcade for the first time. I remember my most vivid memory with Mortal Kombat, it might have been the first time I played it, was when I rented it for the Super Nintendo. And I think because my mom had surely heard of the talk around Mortal Kombat. And I'm like, oh no, but it's cool. This one, the blood's not in it, you know. But we're driving home from the rental store.
Sweat on the Super Nintendo version.
And I remember driving home and looking at the instruction booklet, a lost art. I remember I was looking at it. I think a friend of mine was staying with us for the weekend too. So we're looking at it, and I was just thinking, like, I can't believe it got away with it. I'm actually going to go home and play Mortal fucking Kombat. This is crazy. Because I must have. I don't think I played it before. Maybe I saw it in arcade, but maybe stood at the back so that people didn't see me or something like that. But I'm like, it felt like it was I was committing a crime because I, a child, was going to play this, as Drucker says, this very adult. What's the quote? He says about Mortal Kombat. So yes, gore existed in games, but before Mortal Kombat, it often felt shady, like those games should be kept behind a beaded curtain for grown-ups only. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how, for me, that's how Mortal Kombat felt as well.
I distinctly remember my uncle, who was maybe 10 years older than me. So, I'm like 7. So he's 17. So like he is the target audience for Mortal Kombat. And so we were playing Mortal Kombat 1 had already been released for homes. He comes home to my grandma's house. He's like, guess what? I just saw fucking Mortal Kombat 2. And it's fucking crazy. Like going to see Mortal Kombat 2, where you could only play it in an arcade, was like mythical. Like, holy shit, I can't believe they made Mortal Kombat more fucking crazy. Like, how could you do that?
Yeah, I remember it was. Yeah, I remember having to like try to convince my parents that things were okay for me to use. And I remember that was like one of the big, that was like how it started, because I had to convince them like, oh yeah, this says parental advisory on it, but I'm not going to repeat the words, Mom, don't worry. But I remember distinctly remembering showing my mom like the things you could do on the game to like, I mean, my mom was never like an overbearing like freak or anything like that. Like that, my parents are actually pretty chill, but they're, they probably got swept up in the fervor too, of, oh no, this is going to make your kid, punch you in your sleep or something. You won't even see it coming. But no, I remember even like putting in because you had to do because I had a Sega. I didn't have a Super Nintendo. I went the Sega route when I was at that time. But you put in the blood code. I could probably, if I thought about it, I could probably tell you what it is. But maybe I'm not.
It's Abacab. ABAC.
Yeah, right. Abacab, like the Genesis, right? ABAC, ABB. Yeah. But. Yeah, I remember showing her, say like, look, I'm like, that doesn't even look realistic, Mom. Ha 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 ha. Rips the spine out, and they were like, fine, whatever, just like, the usual lecture of like, don't think you can, do these moves on your friends and stuff like that. And I'm like, I wasn't even really like a kid that liked to like wrestle, with my friends and stuff. I don't know, I was kind of more sensitive, I guess. But and I just remember like I never played like Sonya or Scorpion because they didn't have blood in their finishing move. They just burned them, and I was like, that's dumb. But yeah, no, it was definitely like the first in like a long line of like having to like, get the PowerPoint presentation out for Mom, and here are the reasons why I should get this, and stuff like that. But yeah, I guess it was more of a buzz around like my, friend group, or like in school, like everybody was talking about it, like you were saying about the Mortal Monday and seeing the ads everywhere. I mean, those are like core memories, from being a kid when you're just like swept up into this crazy, new trend or something like that. But yeah, that's probably where I guess I could have made it as a politician instead of what I do now. But
you mentioned the really parental advisory stickers, and I distinctly remember getting this DJ single on cassette by Warren G, which is a great fucking song.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
and I don't know if you guys know this song, but the album version is vastly dirtier to the music video version.
Oh yeah, for
so
sure.
I pulled the little switch and was like, "Oh, Dad, here's the song. It's on MTV right now. You can listen to it. It's totally fine. It's like, there's no bad words at all." And I put in that cassette and I played it on my stereo. And my dad comes in. He's like, "Don't fucking let your mom hear this. She will beat the shit out of you."
Yeah.
I was allowed to get things, but I had to know my limits as to
Yep.
headphones and that sort of thing.
What's crazy is that Adam it's like I've heard this about you, that it's still stuck in your the back of your mind with like I got to show my mom that it's okay. And so every Mortal Kombat since then, you sit her down and show her every single finisher, and you're like, "Mom," now it's just become abuse because especially with those recent ones, man, dude. She's like, great son, thank you so much.
Well, yeah, in Mortal Kombat 2, it was like, what was that? I think Jax, you could just like rip the arms off a guy or something like that. And I was like, it was a little bit different, but I think after the first time, they're just like, whatever, like, obviously right. I'm not like a crazy that's gonna, like run around and just like with bloodlust or something after playing these. So,
and isn't that something like we had to convince our parents? But like, I know, like, for example, that this DJ single in Mortal Kombat, we only really had to do it once, and then they kind of just gave up.
Well, it's funny you said that about this DJ, because I remember my dad had that Columbia house, and I had him get me the whole CD. Nice. And he didn't even pay attention. And then when he came in, he's like, "Why does this say parental advisory on it?" I'm like, "Oh, no, I was just, but no, and like I had to explain the whole thing. It's like, don't worry. It's just, he says a bad word a couple times. So they had to put it on there.
That humiliation ritual of listening to a rap song with your parents.
Oh God.
It's like second only to watching a rated R movie and a sex scene comes on.
Yep.
It's like every kid goes through that, or at least went through that.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat would definitely not have been allowed in my house, like at all. I played it at friends' houses and stuff, but that was something I could never have gotten away with. Like, look, Mom, this guy just froze this chick and kicked her head off. It's practically a baby's game. And so, yeah, I mean, I remember seeing it at friends' houses and stuff, and like holy shit, because at that point I was like pretty familiar with like Street Fighter, and I had Street Fighter 2 and stuff, and you're like, wow, this changes things. Like, this is a whole, it felt so different, and like fighting games would never be the same after that. That's how it felt when you're like 7.
Speaking of seeing arcade games and them kind of changing your life, one of my other favorite chapters in Good Game No Rematch is his chapter about Bigfoot's Arcade, which is almost mythical to Mike Drucker. He can't remember where it was or what it looked like or even how the name of it was spelled, which is exactly the memory you want to have of an arcade. Memories of arcades. There was 2 arcades I remember specifically. There was one at Guptill's Skating Rink in Latham, New York. It was a roller skating rink. They had ice cream. And then also at some point in the 80s or 90s, they built out this huge arcade over on the side that had NBA Jam, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. And the memories of sweaty kids in stinky roller skates playing these arcade games is absolutely burned into my memory. And the other arcade I vividly remember was in Crossgates Mall in Albany, New York. It was connected to the food court and across from the other side of the record store. So in that triangulation was all you needed as a teenager. You could get Taco Bell, you could go buy some CDs, and you could go to the arcade. And that arcade was the first one that had Mortal Kombat 4. Like, they were traveling Mortal Kombat 4 around the nation and trying out different betas of it. So sometimes you would go see it and Reptile was unlocked. Sometimes he wasn't. Sometimes there was a new character. Sometimes the game just crashed repeatedly. But that kind of memory of being in arcades is something that is so important to being a video game kid in the 90s that I don't think happens anymore. Pat, did you have a childhood arcade that you remember?
There was an arcade right off the food court that all I can picture now is that the carpet and the dark lighting, the sound of change machines. I didn't really ever have money to play anything. I would always just stand there and just watch Dragon's Lair go on loop because it was this is a cartoon. This is neat.
Dan, you're a little bit older than us, so therefore you maybe had a little more time in arcades. Did you have a childhood arcade?
Arcade. There's like one arcade, like actual like capital A arcade that I went to on the regular, but it doesn't really line up with the Bigfoot arcade thing because it was a huge arcade at the local university, and they were on top of just like swapping out games, putting in new games. I remember seeing X-Men Children of the Atom for the first time, the Capcom fighting game, and being like, what is happening? Right? And but my early sort of formative arcade memories were actually kind of what you were talking about with the roller rink, except mine was at a bowling alley on my walk home from elementary school.
Also a perfect place for a childhood arcade to be.
Yeah, and kind of tying in with something we talked about before, I broke their Street Fighter II arcade cabinet because I had a really, 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 really bad temper as a kid, and you know what? Sagat sucked, and so I remember screaming very loud the F word, and because it was 3 in the afternoon, all the old ladies bowling turned around slowly, and they said maybe there's something to this video games causing violence thing. But the thing that really
we knew it.
yeah. That was probably my favorite chapter in the book as well, specifically because of my age, as you pointed out. I did get to see that sort of slow decline of arcades in real time. It was more in the moment. I remember thinking, "Oh, there just must not be any good games out." But it really, at least in America, like consoles and of course PCs caught up to the quality of arcade cabinets, and which made games available for home use on better systems. And I just remember, I never, unlike his experience with Bigfoot Arcade, where he just like, oh, I don't want to be here anymore. I just kind of, it was slowly just, I stopped going, right? And I guess that he talks about that as well. Probably because, I think that was also a sense of me feeling like I'm growing up. I go into the arcade, I'm like, oh, there's nothing here I want to play. Where's the Street Fighter cabinet? Where's the Samurai Showdown cabinet, right? It is kind of a weird, lost part of nerd culture that he captures really well in that.
It's kind of the death of the third place in general.
Sure.
There's technology caught up so much that we all have movie theaters in our homes, arcades in our homes, and nobody really goes to those sort of meeting places anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing and a bad thing. I distinctly remember my friend getting a PlayStation 1 and Tekken 3. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you don't have to go to the fucking arcade anymore. Tekken 3 is as good as the arcade right here.
I think the arcade, I think he captures more in the DDR chapter, but like there's also that mythical aspect of going to the arcade and seeing, like you said, seeing Mortal Kombat for the first time, or I remember seeing X-Men, the fighting game, for the first time, and kind of like Dragon's Lair, I'm like, this looks like a cartoon. Like, it didn't look like sprites anymore. It looks so ridiculously just magical that I'm like, there's no way I'm actually can play this. You can't play cartoons, but then
you can't really play King's Lair either.
Yeah, that's true. That's very fair. I remember seeing Samurai Shodown 3 for the first time, and the art style changed drastically from 2 to 3, and being like, this is ridiculous. How games can't get better than this. And then it turns out Samurai Shodown 3 was only okay. But I'm sure a lot of us have those moments of going to an arcade and going like, what is that? And
speaking of the experience of not being able to see things at home, I neglected. My dad would watch us during the day because he worked second shift, and he would always take us to Chuck E. Cheese, which is where parents in the 80s and 90s brought their kids when they were sick of them. So we would go to Chuck E. Cheese weekly, and they had Michael Jackson's Moonwalker next to the Simpsons 4-player machine.
Hell yeah.
Next to the X-Men 6-player machine.
Hell yes.
And you couldn't play any of those games at home. So going to the arcade specifically to play those games, that Terminator 2 machine that had the Uzi, you could only play those at Chuck E. Cheese. So the arcade had this appeal of being somewhere that you could only touch these things. Adam, did you have a Bigfoot's arcade-like place?
So my small hometown had like a little strip mall that had like a Kmart on the end, and like I don't know if you remember that was Chapels. It was like a department store. Did you have that up here? I don't remember.
No.
It must have been like more of a localized thing, but anyway, they had like a little strip mall. But it was like not a strip mall from the outside. Like there was you could like go into Kmart, and at the end you'd walk out into this hallway, and you'd go down. Anyway, there was like a barber shop there, and right across from it was an arcade. So like when I was really little, I'd get my mom would take me there to get my hair cut, and we'd go to the arcade. And I was terrible at video games, because I was like maybe 4 when I was doing this, trying to like reach up and play this thing. But so there's this little arcade there. They eventually closed that, but there's a mall in Ithaca. It was only about a 20-minute drive. It was right next to the food court. Same thing that he mentioned. I don't remember what it was called, but yeah, it was definitely like where we would spend hours shopping because young boys were like, we don't want to go shopping, like we're school clothes, like just pick me out something, I'll go to the arcade. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. That in addition to those, there was that Ninja Turtle game too that was like really innovative for the time, and I remember they released that on console too, but it was definitely not as good as the arcade version.
The NES version was way dumbed down.
Yeah, it was pretty. I mean, it was just like, ugh. And then, yeah, it's funny you mentioned that Terminator 2 game because, it's funny how parents, because, this makes me think of my dad a little bit, where he was like, you don't say that word, and you can't have the CD because of the bad words. But then he took me to see Terminator 2 in the theaters when I was like 10. And that freaking traumatized me because I thought, for 97, there was going to be a freaking nuclear holocaust. And I was like, I couldn't sleep at night. And I was like, so yeah, that was nice and traumatizing. But we loved that Terminator 2 game. And I remember that's like another core memory. One day we walked in there, we're like, you know what? He's like, we're going to beat this game. He literally pulled out like a roll of quarters for me and a roll of quarters for him, and we sat at that freaking machine for like 2 hours playing that game. So yeah, it wasn't close to home, but Ithaca was like a 20-minute drive, and that was like a weekend thing that we would do, like on payday. My parents got paid or whatever, and so I was there quite often, and yeah, it was definitely a great memory. And yeah, so
you talk about playing games with your dad, and a lot of, at least the early parts of the book, was about Mike's relationship with his dad, which he describes as a reverse cats in the cradle situation, which I thought was hilarious. Where him and his dad do not connect on anything at all.
Right.
To critique it, I thought that part was a little, I don't know, maybe I'm too sensitive. It's a little rough to read. He was kind of hard on his dad, I feel like.
Yeah.
But I definitely had that. Like I said, my dad, second shift, he was very tired. Growing up in the 60s and 70s, my dad was a mechanic. I was an indoor 80s kid playing video games. We did connect. We went to hockey. We love that. But there is a disconnect between those generations that I think Drucker captured in this book. I don't know if you guys, Pat, do you feel like your dad's a little bit older, actually?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you had sort of a disconnect with your dad in games? Did he ever play games with you?
No, neither of my parents ever played any games, and but I don't know. Like, I don't remember there being any kind of like crossover with that. Like, he would take me to like my Cub Scout meetings and stuff, and like we do lots of other stuff together. So like I didn't have to explain video games to him or anything. I would just play them for a little bit,
sure,
and do something else.
I mean, my dad definitely tried. We played NHL '94. We played Mortal Kombat together. He was, of course, never very good, and I don't know if you met my dad, but he's got temper on him.
So, and I have an older brother too that was playing some games as well. So like I had that.
Rock, what about you? Did you play games with your parents?
Not as a kid, no. My mom, no interest in video games. Actually, like to this day, thinks that they're pretty damaging and dumb, and has like no time or tolerance for them whatsoever. My dad, as a kid, didn't really have an interest in them. I think that he's actually the one who bought me Street Fighter and the second Genesis controller, but that was not because he had any knowledge, like, at all. It was just like, oh, it's my Wednesday to see my kid, and we're going to go to the toy store. Oh, this is the game you want? Okay, cool. Oh, we better get you a second controller so you can play with your sister. And he had no interest or knowledge of games at all. And it wasn't until later on, when I was in my I think like late teens, early 20s when my dad got into stuff like we would play like Soul Calibur 2 together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
and he enjoyed the shit out of that, and then he got like on his own. He got into Gran Turismo 4 like really hard.
That's a good dad game.
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Oh, it is like back when
Did he have
like
the pedals in the wheel?
we ended up getting them for him. So
Okay.
what happened was I would come home from work and I would find him in my room playing Gran Turismo 4. And like it was fine, but I was like, wow, Dad, I didn't like he had just seen me playing it, and he really, really enjoyed it, and we ended up buying him his own TV, PlayStation 2 copy of the game, and that
Shit.
really nice steering wheel pedal
Mhm.
setup. So that he could just kind of like do his own thing off in the corner of the living room, and that was he loved that. He did that for years.
Lost his job.
Yep. This is my job now. I'm practicing.
Dan, what about you? I don't know about your parental situation. Did your dad play games?
Oh God, no. My dad is also he was an older dad and
Mhm.
a raging academic. Like his idea of fun is just reading, and that's it. But so he had it was no real like there's a lot of connection there that I had with Drucker as well. Like my dad and I, especially growing up, we had kind of zero connection. He didn't know how to talk to kids and stuff like that, and he just had no interest in games at all. The idea of me playing games, I wanted to share ideas like stories and stuff. He's like, whatever, childish things. Actually, but the one sort of overlap it ties back to the previous podcast that you guys had, where I shared the story of. So I'm out on the West Coast.
Oh my
In
God.
California.
I love this story. I know exactly where you're going, and I love this story.
I don't know
I'm sorry.
I don't know where you're going.
My dad grew up in the 40s and 50s in Los Angeles, in
Oh,
Hollywood.
okay. Mhm.
And he came up to visit me in Sacramento, which he lives. It's about a 6-hour drive. And I'm like, hey, Dad, I want to show you a video game real quick. And he's like, okay, why? I'm like, well, it's called LA Noire. And he, as soon as it loaded up and we went out into the street, he get in the car and drive. Go. And then he got mad at me because I kept like hitting shit with these pretty cars that he knew every single one. He's like, what are you doing? You're ruining. I'm like, Dad, it's fake. 2, I'm trying to go, but this AI here does not let me go when I want to, and they're the problem. And yeah, so just driving around all 1940s LA, going to the big landmarks. He's like, can you go in that door? No, okay, that's fine. Well, they're doing their best, Dad. This is made by a bunch of Australians. But then he's like, let's go see if we can find my aunt's house. So like driving around, of course, they, just like with any game based in the city, they constrict areas and move stuff around.
Mhm.
But I remember it was just like he was just watching and just didn't want it to stop. Because it took him back to the LA that he so vividly remembers, still vividly remembers, and that's a moment that I'll cherish forever, especially as he's he's getting up there. That I'm so glad I had that game, that they made that game, that I could show him for half an hour something that he thought would only exist in hazy memory. The one time we played games together, it was actually very profound and important to me.
One of the best parts about Drucker's stories about his parents, and he even couches it in, hey, I know I'm ragging on these guys, and it comes off as harsh, but let me tell you about one of the best things my dad ever did for me. And it's the story about they had a break-in at their home when he was a kid. Dealing with a home invasion is probably pretty traumatic for a father, a protector. And eventually he's just like, what fucking game do you want? I'll go buy it for you. And so Drucker says he wants Street Fighter 2 replaced, the most of anything he lost. And so his dad drives around to different game stores, department stores, whatever there was in that time. And he's trying to get a deal on Street Fighter 2 because they just had a home invasion. Money is tight as it is. And as a kid, the author recognizes that this is weird that his dad is putting so much effort into this. And then as an adult looking back and saying, wow, my dad like humiliated himself for an entire day in front of all these other dads begging for just a deal on a Street Fighter 2 cart for his son. I thought was a really cool story. And I, definitely kind of redeemed a little bit of the dad bashing that went on in that game in the book.
Yeah.
Adam, do you have any sort of memories of your dad doing something, buying a game for you, anything like that?
Jeez, it's weird because, like, I remember, like, I kind of have the same sentiment you have about that, where it kind of comes off as dad bashing. Because, like, when I was reading that part, I was like, geez, like, my dad, like, it was like almost like a 180, like, our relationship. I mean, he was like the baby boomer dad that was like, the bad temper, and he grew up poor and didn't want to waste his money and stuff, and had a temper and all that stuff. But he was really like, we really connected on a lot of different things, he even says in like the book where he takes them to a Marlins game in the World Series. And like, he's just like, oh, or like when he got the foul, like he caught the foul ball.
I know, I would have
He's
shit
like, oh,
my
I think
pants
I
if that
got
happened.
it. Obviously, like, I love baseball, and that's like one of the things that we, connected on. But yeah, I don't remember really any kind of dad humiliating moment. Like, we played board games, like we'd go fishing, we like baseball, like, he even played a couple video games with me. My mom always tells a story when we got the NES that they would make me go to bed so they could stay up and play Mario Brothers. It was really funny.
That's awesome.
Nothing really along the lines of that kind of, like going the extra length. I guess it's fortunate we never had a situation like that, but
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, that was pretty crazy. I mean, my dad would have lost his shit if we had a home invasion. Like, he would have bought like 5 more guns and put like triple padlocks on the door,
Dude,
whatever.
my dad would be on the news and it would not be good. I can guarantee you that it would be real bad.
Yeah. Yep.
Dan, I know you have kind of a history with Street Fighter 2. You rented them a lot. I know you told me in your notes. And Drucker held on to that copy of Street Fighter 2 for years. Yeah. Do you have anything in your collection that you've held on to, maybe even not even owning the machine to play it on anymore?
There's one. There's like, I still have a lot of. I just can't bring myself to get rid of them. A lot of instruction booklets from the old like NES and Super NES RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they were books, man. Nothing on the level of like PC RPG books, but they're just because they're full of art and it's just really cool stuff. But the one memory I have, I don't have it anymore, but it was really, I think it was during the PS1 era. My mom comes out of her room and she's like, "Here's a Christmas gift I forgot to give you," and it was an unopened copy of the NES ice hockey game.
Oh, nice. I love that game.
Oh, wow.
It's an incredible game. I'm like, what is this? And you forgot to give me? Like, Mom, this came out like 8 years ago or whatever, right? 10 years ago. She's like, yeah, I was going through my stuff and I found it in the bottom of a drawer. I put it down there because I didn't want you to like go through my stuff and find it. I'm like, well, you did a real good job, I guess. But like, so yeah, I'm like, I busted out my old Nintendo and it still worked at the time and played some fucking ice hockey and it was awesome. But I held on to that. Actually, I think I still do have that game. Obviously, it's not unopened anymore, but right. I don't care. But yeah, but I remember thinking that was not special, but it was cool to kind of have this piece of my that was supposed to be part of my childhood come into my life when I was much older, and still being able to enjoy it quite a bit, and obviously a memory that I hold on to. I think a lot of us, it sounds like a lot of us, maybe came up through divorced houses. My parents were divorced as well. And so there's a lot of, I know, sentimentality that comes with video or anything that we enjoyed as kids. But I think especially video games that I think I held on to a lot of stuff for maybe a little bit too long just because I'm like, oh, this reminds me of either a better time or the good times when things maybe weren't so good at home, And yeah, I think for me, generally, I still can't bring myself to get rid of a lot of these old instruction books.
Pat, I know you had a collection of video game consoles and games, and they all went missing a couple of years ago.
Yep.
In a bad way.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Did you manage to hold on to anything sentimental?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean...
was all that stuff your childhood stuff, or was that stuff you collected as a teen and an adult?
Yeah, more of like late teen adult
Okay.
kind of stuff. It just spanned from PlayStation 2 and original Xbox collection. Lost all that, but no, I still have everything like prior.
So you still have all your Nintendo and Super Nintendo and stuff like that?
Yeah, somewhere. I know it exists somewhere. I just don't know exactly where it's located.
That's awesome. Rock, what about you? Do you have anything from your childhood? I know you've moved a lot, very long distances.
Yeah. The one that comes immediately to mind is I don't know if you guys remember those old the PC versions. Well, I think they were the only versions of like Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, Baldur's Gate 2, that stuff. So one of the things that I loved about the design of those boxes was that they looked like huge books. Like that was like they look like these enormous like tomes.
I mean,
And,
they call them big box games.
yeah, and they each came with a physical map of like the game world, but it was always kind of done up like a map you might find in the game, so it's a little bit crude, but kind of gives you the general idea. And I think it was the Icewind Dale 2 like collector's edition or special edition or whatever came with like a proper cloth map. It came with a little tube of dice and like a spiral bound notebook, and those boxes and the cool stuff in them were so awesome. And there's definitely some nostalgia there for sure that I could never bring myself to get rid of them. They're in my basement as we speak, and I don't know that I will get rid of them. I think they're the only game boxes from the old days that I have anymore, and those were some of my favorite games when I was coming up as a teenager.
So speaking of RPGs, I think one of the things in this book that did not work at all for me, and I think you guys are. I know Pat's probably going to feel different about this. One of the parts I absolutely hated was the chapter about a D&D campaign. I think that sort of thing just does not work at all in a book. And it's interesting because in the book itself, Drucker says, oh, reading about other people having fun is not fun. And then this chapter was all about reading about people having fun.
Yeah.
And I thought that I just don't like reading about role-playing games, like the characters in them. I think that it's the worst part of the McElroy empire. I think it's the worst part of Dropout TV is all their D&D shows. And I was wondering how you guys feel about that. Dan, do you have any opinions on reading about other people having fun?
I do not particularly have an opinion, but I didn't find the chapter particularly bothersome either. It was my only criticism was like you're talking about the chapter where he kept like pissing people off, right? Yeah. And that was one of the chapters again towards the middle of the book here where I'm like I got to the end and I'm like if this is trying to like if this has a moral to the story, I'm not sure I'm really seeing it, or I feel like it didn't stick the landing particularly well. But that being said, I thought it was amusing. I don't particularly have a problem. Again, so like I also I make comics for a kind of living, not really. And especially early on, I found a lot of enjoyment listening to podcasts of like live actual plays, I think they're called, right? Of people just playing RPGs. I grew up with a lot of friends who loved tabletop RPGs, and I never really got into them, but I always found them interesting just because the level of creativity was so different from playing video games, where all I have to work with in games is like the tools that have been programmed into the game. Like there's no real, game
master
making stuff up, right? Yeah. The idea of being able to just kind of make stuff up and see if it works, and I think I liked the rigidity of games because it's hard to like be a fuck up, like to do what Mike does in that chapter and get everybody mad at you. Like the only way you can fuck up is to die in the game or to not be able to progress. And so like I think one of the things that always intimidated me about tabletop role-playing games was the improvisation. That's the word I was trying to find. The improvisation aspect of it. Well, like that sounds like too much leeway. Too much could go wrong there. What if I do something wrong? And they always try to tell me you can't do anything wrong. It's about imagination and creativity. I'm like, no, that's not my wheelhouse. Right. And I think I also had the outlets of like I wrote stories and I drew stuff. Like that was my creative outlet. But I always found a lot to admire in people that love tabletop role playing games. And because of that, I don't mind listening to them or people reading about people playing. I found that the chapter was absolutely fine, aside from I felt like the lack of actual direction.
Oh, I mean, I like the idea of it. I never get to play. There's so many different systems and frameworks for tabletop games like that. Man, I feel I'm jealous of people that got to grow up doing it, have these kind of exercises and imagination. But it's difficult to like kind of grow something like that from ground up.
I don't have a problem with listening to those kind of, D&D real play podcasts. I've listened to a few of them. I think they're generally kind of fun, especially for me who, like Pat, I love them, don't ever have the time or the people to play one myself. So I have fun listening to other people do it. The problem with the chapter in the book for me is that that's not really what you're doing. You're not really listening to or reading a campaign, or you're not listening to someone play or reading about someone play. You're listening to someone tell you about the stuff they did while they were playing, if you understand the difference.
Sure,
there.
yeah, absolutely.
So
for sure.
It just kind of the whole thing just kind of fell flat because it's like that's definitely a case of show don't tell for me. And it's like this chapter doesn't really do anything for like or mean anything to me. It just kind of is like, I don't know, to me it just kind of read like, listen to how I was really frustrating to a bunch of people a couple of times, and beyond that, it's like I don't understand how this kind of notches into the overall story you're trying to tell. It barely has anything to do with games, like other than the fact that like it happens to like take place in a game. It's, to me, it was more just like I don't know, listen to how I was kind of an asshole for a while, and I don't know, like as a chapter about a game ostensibly, it just kind of fell flat for me.
I think that actually ties to why I was kind of frustrated with it. I was hoping, considering like this section of the book is him becoming a professional comedy writer, that like, oh, he could find a way to that learning how to actually be a team player or something like that, and being creative within a creative outlet like Dungeons and Dragons. He's like, oh, I actually learned about character and writing characters, and like you can make a character that's annoying but still fit in with the story of the story that's being told or something like that, right? But like it just, I think the chapter ends is like, and then that character died, so I made a different one. I'm like, cool. I was like, how's it? You're talking about how games influenced your life. Like, just one more step, my dude. Let's get there, right?
Yeah, you learned nothing through this.
I want to go back to a part I did enjoy and I could identify a lot with, and I think we all can, was called Bookstore Boy. And it was about Drucker's parents working overtime, presumably, or something, and they would just drop him off at the local bookstore. And he would go grab some game magazines or strategy guides and sit there and read for hours. I was never dropped off at bookstores, but I definitely loitered in them. I mean, literally my entire life. I still work at a bookstore. I loiter at 8 hours a day.
You just found a way to get paid for it.
Right. Yeah. But I can vividly remember grabbing game magazines and just poring over them, and just being able to absolutely lose yourself in the screenshots and thinking about what could this game be like. I had some subscriptions as a kid to Game Players magazine, and I absolutely loved being in a bookstore so much. Unfortunately, I made it my job. Adam, do you have any memories of going to bookstores as a kid?
So it wasn't really like a bookstore per se, because like we really My experience with bookstores was like Walden Books in the mall, like that little tiny,
Hell yes.
you know,
Hell
Totally
yes.
valid.
there wasn't, yeah, it wasn't like the major, you know, they didn't, I mean, I think like
Yeah.
the mall in Syracuse got a Borders, I think sometime in like the mid to late 90s. But the store that I loitered in was this one called Twilight Book and Game. And it was, they had this huge flagship store, like it was like in this terrible part of town of Syracuse. Like I remember my dad taking me there a couple times. He's like, don't get out of the car till I get out of the car. We're walking up
Damn.
together. I don't care how old you are. You're holding my hand, you know, stuff like that. Like, I mean, it was this really bad part of town, but they opened up like a satellite store in the Carousel Mall in Syracuse, which is now Destiny USA. And it was a smaller store, but it was big enough, and it had everything. It was like comics, it was like video games, it was like tabletop games, it was all these things. And it was like, if I'd go to the mall, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna go to Twilight, and they're like, okay, we'll pick you up in like an hour. So I would just, I mean, the people that work there were really cool. You know, they're not like these like overbearing adults. They're kind of like nerds too. You know, so like, you know, this pubescent kid comes in, you know, teen pubescent kid comes in, like, you know, I'm just fingering through the comic books and looking at all this stuff. It was just a really cool store, you know, for comics and things like that. And sorry, I ended up getting into like, you know, those card playing games like like Marvel Overpower, the card game and stuff like that. That was like a store that always had like the packs and like the starter decks and things like that. And but yeah, no, that was just you know, it was a time when you could, you know, like he was talking about, you could just drop your kid off at a store and most likely they would be there when you came to pick them up later on. You know, they wouldn't be abducted or ran away or something like that. But yeah, no, that was really the only the kind of like that fit with what he was talking about was the Twilight Book and Game. Of course, they've since gone out of business, so I miss them. They were fun.
See, in my memories, Pat, the Walden Books is in the same place I think your arcade was. Is that true?
Across.
Okay.
Walden Books was it was across the hallway, and it was I remember when that mall opened, it was a Friar Tuck bookstore, and there was actually a second bookstore in the mall as well for quite a few years. I think it was Walden Books it must have been Walden Books, which is crazy that a mall could sustain two bookstores. There were also multiple like Earth stores as well at the time, which was the coolest thing.
Rock, what about you? Do you have a hometown bookstore?
Yeah, mine was actually also a Walden Books. And
See, they should there's a total fucking need, and I've said this to my bosses before, and we've been offered to have mall spots before, and they never think that it would be worthwhile. And maybe it's not anymore. All of us can vividly remember going to bookstores in the
Yes.
mall.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that sort of thing does not exist anymore.
Yeah, the mall was within walking distance from my house or bike riding distance from my house, and that was also the closest bookstore and the only bookstore I knew of in my city. Yeah, it was that chapter in the book was so, I don't know, it felt very warm for me because
Good word for it.
no matter no matter what, when I was a kid, I've had those experiences of, a grown up needs to go somewhere, or maybe it even is to the bookstore, but invariably I'd always end up by myself, kind of checking out whatever stuff I was interested in, and it was always just kind of like, meet me over, by the newspapers in half an hour or whatever. And so yeah, just this idea of like getting to hang out in a bookstore for for Drucker, as long as he wanted, pretty much, was just felt like a dream for childhood me, getting to just spend, all your time in this bookstore. And similarly, I rarely bought anything because I was a kid. I didn't have I didn't have any money, so just kind of like, how far can I get through this thing before I have to go? It was that was probably one of the, I don't know, most comfortable chapters in the book for me. I think if that's the way I can put it, it to me it didn't really connect as directly to games, didn't really matter as much. Like I could see where he was going, and it kind of fit in with the kind of, I don't know, loneliness of a sort that a lot of like younger video gamers feel. And it super connected with me.
Dan, you and I met in a bookstore.
We did.
Professional loitering.
Yeah. I did. I was doing my best with my degree in English. I was selling DVDs in a Barnes and Noble.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, what is your connection with bookstores throughout your life?
Actually, before I worked there, I never stepped foot. No, but I grew up in a weird town in Central Coast of California where like they had actual like bans on things like drive-through restaurants and no big box stores. And so we had a Walden Books, and they almost had we had a mall, but it was empty, and there was a snootiness around. It's like, why are you going to the mall? My hometown kind of sucks, but we had like this open air mall basically, and there was a Walden Books in there. That's where the Blockbuster was and all that stuff, and nothing but just incredible memories of that Walden Books. It's where I discovered comics. Honestly, it's where I still have actually the 5 books that I remember purchasing at what my mom bought at Walden Books for me. I still have those. Talking about sentimental stuff because they were just so formative for me. This the First Publishing is the name of the company. They're color reprints of the original Ninja Turtle comics that I found right before the movie came out, and X-Men: God Loves, Man Kills. Those 5 books just reshaped what kind of stories I wanted to read. And obviously I have them and I read through them regularly, but that memory of like looking through them slowly in a Walden book, sitting on like the floor or like finding one of those little step stools that you pulled over and just sat on. And going back to when we were talking about the mythology of games and myth making, nothing like reading those gaming mags and like seeing tiny screenshots of these games that like only released in Japan, and you're like, this looks like the best thing that's ever been made, and just a promise of everything that they were putting in there. And obviously, if it came over here, when you finally got it or rented it, you're like, oh, it's just a game, and that's great. Games are great, right. but there's just the vivid sort of sense memory of reading those magazines every month. Just of like, wow, games are so big, and kind of like what we were all talking about, and like I'm alone peeking through like a peephole, looking at all the fun it seems like everybody else in the world is having with games, and there's a loneliness about it, but there's definitely a warmth about it, like Rock said earlier. It really reading those magazines, going to those bookstores really are a core part of my childhood. And I would say, because not only the books that I bought, but reading about games, kind of a key stepping stone for me to become the adult I eventually became.
And one of my favorite video game books is called Games You Will Never Play. And it was put together by Unseen64, which is a website, Unseen64. I've always had fascination with games that never came out. It's one of the things that I think is interesting about video games is that there's a lot of games that get made and get featured in those game magazines, and they're far enough along that they get written up and they get screenshots and they just disappear. You don't really hear about that in other you don't see books getting written up and then they never come out, or movies getting reviewed and they never come out. It seems to happen a lot more in video games. Yeah. And the fact that they were in those game magazines made it seem almost even more mythical. Resident Evil for the Game Boy. And that thing never came out. But it would have, full articles in it, and made you seem like you were learning about things you should know about. Right. Which I think is something unique to video games that I think is very cool. And I love that it was preserved in this book, Games You Will Never Play by Unseen64.
I'll check that out. I know as an adult, now that I, am an adult video game nerd and I have expendable income, I'm talking about nerd. Why am I embarrassed to talk about this on a video game nerd podcast? But I own a Super NT by Analog, the FPGA sort of recreation of Super Nintendo. And, it's not region locked. It's just, play any game, any Super Nintendo game on this thing. And I went for a while. I'm like, you know what? eBay exists, so I started buying those Japanese games that I saw in the magazines when I was a kid. And then there's one that was called Bahamut Lagoon by Squaresoft at the time, now Square Enix. And I remember being really excited because that game just looked so beautiful. Like, I can't believe that this thing could even exist. And then I get it, And then I put it in my Super NT, and I'm like, I got a beer. I'm like, let's just have a good night, And a couple things hit me. Just like I
not
said
very
earlier,
good.
it became you boot it up and it's a video game, and
Yeah.
it has, you see the limitations, and then I'm like, oh, it's an RPG, it's a JRPG, and it's all in Japanese. I'm like, what have I done? Because I'm like, I got maybe 10 minutes in, like I don't know how to do anything, and I could just sit here and just listen to the music and watch these sprites sit still. I'm like, okay, I made a choice and I have to live with that now. So sometimes the dream is better than the reality.
That is a great segue to the end of the book, which is called Return of Bigfoot's Arcade. And it takes place in the midst of COVID. The author, Mike Drucker, is kind of just sick of being in his apartment, and he decides to collect all of his video game tabletop machines he's collected, his projectors, and just kind of create this little fake arcade, recreation of Bigfoot's Arcade in his apartment, which I think seems incredibly awesome. Maybe not as cool when you set it up for the second or third time.
Right.
And maybe not as cool when you invite the girl over to play the games with you. But, just kind of going back and creating this thing from your childhood. Adam, you and I do this a lot with baseball cards and Star Wars. We go back and buy the things that we didn't have as kids. What did you think about the end of Good Game No Rematch, where he kind of creates his childhood again?
Yeah, I thought that was it was almost kind of like a bittersweet kind of moment, where it's like obviously you're trying to recreate something that's like long gone, and I always see those like little memes of people like, oh, you went out that one time to play with your friends and you didn't realize it was the last time, or you said one more quarter and you didn't realize it was your last quarter because you just stopped going to arcades or they closed down. So it was really a bittersweet, for me, and it kind of made me think like I don't I didn't buy any of those things, like that he was talking about, those little mini like tabletops and stuff, but I've definitely toyed with the idea because I've seen them, like in Walmart or something, even like a bigger cabinet. They like released that old that Star Wars game. I remember it was always at the movie theater in my hometown. It was the one arcade machine they had, and it was like that weird like Atari vector graphics type
with the yoke joystick.
Yeah, and it was like right, and you could just like, and it was really, I don't know why I found that so fascinating. Even now, it's like so rudimentary when it comes to like the development of how graphics and games are and stuff. But I would have loved to have like bought that because they're like you said, they're affordable now. I mean, you could buy an actual arcade machine, years ago for like a couple $1,000s. Like I'm not going to drop that. Like my wife would kill me. But they have these, for a couple $100s, they had a bigger cabinet. And I'm like, that would be a really neat idea, just to have it anyway. I mean, it's like a good, like fun place in your house. Cause we have, our kids are adults now, but they still really like video games and stuff like that. And I just went to like a Herbie's Burgers down in Albany, and they had, like the cabinet size, Ninja Turtles game that we talked about previously, and they had a smaller tabletop NBA Jam, and I was like, that'd be really cool just to, and then when I read that, about him, doing it in his apartment, I'm like, wow, that's like a really good idea. So now he's putting ideas in my head I shouldn't have, but yeah, I thought that was a really neat thing for him to do. And of course he had to bring up the Wizard, with Fred Savage. Like that was the first time I think we saw Super Mario Brothers 3, and that was a really like pivotal game for me, when I was a kid, was getting Mario 3, and I just remember seeing that on the movie. And I love Fred Savage because I watched The Wonder Years, and I had this weird dinosaur like educational video that he narrated or something. It was really weird.
I've seen that. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's like it turns into like a claymation type of history of the dinosaurs or something. Yeah. My aunt got me that, and like I watched it like continuously, and like every time she came over, I'm like, look what I want, and she's like, she got sick of it. She would like babysit me and
incredible.
stuff. But yeah, isn't that weird? But yeah, no, that was a great. I thought that was a great way to end it. Like I said, for me, a lot of the stuff I couldn't really relate to that he talked about, but that was actually a really neat chapter, I thought. So
not even a week ago played my dad in a Mortal Kombat 2 machine at BJ's Wholesale Club. And it was because they were selling those $400 arcade 1-up machines for Christmas. And I think, I have heard mixed things about how well those things sell. But I think just the idea of them and the access to everybody being able to bring home these arcade cabinets, I think is an awesome thing. Pat, how did you feel about the end of this book?
It's a neat little setup. I mean, look into someone kind of going crazy.
Right.
I think I know like the little collectible arcade machines that he's talking about too, and I'm like, man, that'd be pretty cool to have those. But it seems like he jumped through quite a few like income levels very rapidly. Or I mean, over the course of a book seems rapid, but so I would never be able to purchase those, and
right.
let alone have a whole arcade worth. But
I mean, he has several high-paying jobs in a row.
Yeah.
He's a single dude in a one-bedroom apartment, he says. So, there are just some different life priorities there with having these arcade machines, which he even, says to self-detriment is like, this is, people spend their money on their kids in their retirement. I bought Pac-Man for a tabletop machine when I have all this on my phone and 15 other machines.
The Sims chapter didn't work at all for me. Like, he was trying to like make that become his excuse for not having kids, and it was like, you're stretching a little bit here.
Yeah, that chapter was rough, dude.
Can
I'm like, okay, we get it. You don't want kids. Do we need to go on for another 10 pages? I get it, man.
We all created little torture chambers in Sims. Like, that didn't.
Sorry, if I can jump in on that bullshit. Like that chapter was the only one that made me like actively frustrated. I'm a dad, and a relatively new one. And like, I've always kind of been on the side of like, hey, if you want to have kids, cool, go for it. If you don't, awesome, do that too. I don't fucking care. But I've known a few people who are kind of like subscribed to the I guess you'd call it like the child free, like the capital child free movement, and they always kind of remind me of the like your teenage relative. Maybe you've been this relative who like just discovered atheism and kind of feels the need to bring it up at every family gathering. They like find a way to like wedge it in there. Like the child free people are kind of the same way. They kind of always find a way to like loop the conversation back to how smart they are for not having kids, or how awesome it is to not have kids. And this chapter kind of felt like that to me. It's like, dude, this barely fucking fits with your book. Like, if you don't want to have kids, like, cool, fine, like that's great. But like, it more felt like him kind of doing that. Like, I need to kind of like wedge this in here and kind of, go through some contortions to make this fit the book, so that you guys all know, not just that I don't have kids, but like why I'm really smart for not doing it too. I guess, like, sure, like that. Like, I don't need to know that, and this doesn't really fit with the book, and you're just kind of annoying me now,
It's harming the argument of the book, right? Don't forget the subtitle of the book is A Life Made of Video Games, and like, sure, that fits into that idea, but the idea of like, oh, video games made me who I am, I guess it does fit into that idea, but you're really revealing a side of yourself that is not, he's a good person because of The Sims or something like that, right? It really did kind of, it felt like a huge stumble of this is the only chapter that I really actively disliked.
When we were exchanging notes, the only thing that you said outright was bad was the Sims chapter.
Yeah, and I'm a person with no kids, right? And it's like, but it's still like, calm down, bro. I think Rock actually nailed it on the head. It's like, you care too much about this dude, and no one else does. Like, not that he's made the choice to not have kids, but like, he's really, really wants you to know. And
it's in your face, he's like really in your face about it, and it's like, how many other like I don't know, like non-religious beliefs do you run into in your life where people do that shit? Like, get in your face about their beliefs, or like politics. It's like, I don't know. It's just like, I really need you to know.
Yeah.
Not just that I don't have kids, but that like maybe I'm a little bit better than you because I don't have
I used to live next door to a guy that was a born again Christian, and I always thought it was so funny because I'm like, he had these really loud Bible readings every Sunday in his backyard, and whenever I'd see him, it cracked me up. I'm like, hey, how's it going? He's like, blessed. You don't have to be so mad about it. but I'm happy for you. Blessed. I'll never.
So, wrapping up our discussion of the book, there are definitely some parts that do not work, like the Sims chapter, the D&D chapter for me. Some of the listicle articles I think did not work in audio, but work in text. But I think the StarCraft, the Columbine parts was amazing. I think the Bigfoot's arcade part was amazing. I think the part about him growing up in bookstores was great. I think I really enjoyed this book. I think there were some stumbling blocks. I would have taken out 100 pages of it. What would be your guys' one sentence? Adam, what would be your one sentence review of this book?
Good trip down nostalgia lane, I would say, to sound corny about it. Obviously, I agreed with you guys a lot about what didn't work and everything, but overall I think it really makes you appreciate the things that you loved before, and it really, and even if you couldn't relate to some of his stories, it kind of made you think about your own stories that would fit where he was talking about, or maybe like he didn't mention a game that was really important to you. You kind of remember it fondly in that way in a run-on sentence. There you go.
I don't know. It's like, it kind of feels like a collection of like blog posts. So like not necessarily a bad way, but finding some kind of thread that kind of ties everything together. It's mostly successful. So I mean, I enjoyed most of the stories in it.
Nostalgia for a certain type of person of a certain age, and some of it hits, some of it doesn't.
A mixed bag, as they say.
Yeah, if I really wanted to be cliche, I'd say a mixed bag overall.
Mixed bag. For fans of the genre.
Short. Yeah.
Dan, what about you? Give me your academic summation here, your feelings.
I think it hits more than it misses, but I think if we look at it kind of in its place in history, I'm really glad this exists, because it goes to what we were talking, you and I were talking before, that when we chose this book, and why it's a good place to start is because in a lot of games criticism, it went from being more of like a straightforward review, like graphics are this, music is this, gameplay is this, to if you read a lot of games criticism, there's a lot more biography of the writer being woven into it, which hits and misses. But like, this is one of the first books of this kind, I would say, where it's just like, this is a person that is writing an autobiography or memoir.
A successful person, it should be pointed out.
Right. And like, the thing that made him is video games. And it's a nice evolution of sort of autobiography or memoir where, while we were growing up, it was people talking about growing up in the 70s and like, falling off bikes, or I don't know, whatever they did in the 70s. They fell off a lot of bikes, I think. I don't know. I think it's a great first entry into this kind of storytelling for this generation of people. And I hope a lot of people read it so that the next one that comes along is even better. But I think it hits more than misses, and it's a really good first entry into a more modern, nerdy memoir genre. That's my sentence.
Awesome. Could not agree more. Guys, I'm so excited we talked about this book. I think this discussion went excellently. I want to encourage everybody to like, subscribe, email us at textadventurebookclub@gmail.com. We're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram. Please give us a follow and all that sort of thing. Before we wrap up, we're going to announce our next book, which is Blood, Sweat, and Pixels by Jason Schreier. It is a look at video game development, and it follows the development of several different games, Destiny, Star Wars 1313, and I read bits of it before it came out, and it's been a couple years. I think I want to say this book came out in 2017 or so. And Jason Schreier is a fantastic author.
Yeah.
He was the editor-in-chief of Kotaku for years. And I think that I think we're all going to really enjoy this book, and I think it's going to be an interesting sort of pivot from memoir to sort of nonfiction journalism.
Yeah.
And so once again, our next book is Blood, Sweat, and Pixels by Jason Schreier. If you want to read along with us, join in. We're probably going to have our meeting about a month from now, so mid-December. Okay, so we're going to wrap up with what we're seeing, what we're watching, what we're playing. Rock, what are you into?
So I talked last time about kind of jumping in and out of the Mass Effect Legendary Trilogy. So I'm working my way through Mass Effect 3 right now. I'm not super far in. I've just kind of started one of the Leviathan DLC, and that's been most of it. You know, kind of playing Mass Effect 3 and listening to this book and watching horror movies in 20-minute stretches on my lunch break at work. I watched the Snyder cut of Justice League.
Oh, Jesus.
I think it took me 2.5 weeks, but I got there and it was awesome. So yeah, that's what I got.
Dan Bethel, what are you into? What's going on in your life? Plug your comic.
My comic, Long John, an existential western you can read at longjohncomic.com, is just started its final chapter. So you can read the whole comic again at longjohncomic.com. And what I've been reading, a graphic novel that I am absolutely just fascinated by. It's published by Dark Horse called Helen of Windhorn, by Tom King and unpronounceable French artist Bilquis Evely. She worked with Tom King on the Supergirl World of Tomorrow book, which is her style is absolutely gorgeous. It seems like she's trying to like they pulled her from like some like quote unquote capital A art career to slum it and make comics, but it's her stuff is absolutely gorgeous. But it's such a really interesting story about pulp fiction, like pulp novels, sort of the death of that genre and how, even though they were super popular at the time, the creators have kind of been forgotten. But also telling this really interesting sort of fantasy story set in old aristocratic America and the problems that children have relating to adult, their parents, especially if their parents are very problematic. It's a really gorgeous book, and I'm really enjoying it and taking my time reading it. So yeah, Helen of Windhorn by Dark Horse. Check it out.
Awesome. Adam, what about you? What are you watching? What are you playing? What are you reading?
First of all, embarrassingly, and I apologize, Dan Bethel, I have never read your comic until just recently. I started.
Wow.
Okay.
I know you've been doing it for so long, and I've always meant to do, to check it out. I read the first chapter, the Sunza chapter, loved it. I think it's great, and
Thanks.
You did a really good job on that. So I'm going to try to finish all the other things you put out. With that, now that you're wrapping it up. It's kind
of a good time to jump
thanks.
on, honestly. Yeah.
I started reading that, so it's really good. I really like it. And also after months of trying to convince my wife to play the Star Wars Unlimited card game with me, we bought the starter deck and we're going to start playing that.
Awesome.
I'm slowly converting her to my nerdish tendencies. I think there's definitely a lot of resistance there, but finally got her to do it. So hopefully we'll crack that open today and see if it's any good. As far as game playing, so if you're a fan of old sports games like Tecmo Bowl, I found an app or like a mobile game. It's like called Retro Bowl 26.
Retro Bowl,
it's like fully licensed by NFL. And it looks just like Tecmo Bowl. It's a little bit, the controls are a little bit better. Looks a little bit better, but it has that same pixelated feel to it. So I've been playing that on my mobile phone, because we still call them mobile phones, I guess. And as far as the reading, besides the book I just finished up, my favorite baseball writer, Joe Posnanski's Baseball 100, probably one of the best baseball books I've ever read. So I've been reading that, and I'm actually excited about his new one that he wrote with Michael Schur that's coming out next year, The Fan. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. So yeah, that's really what I've been up to, reading, watching, playing. What about you?
So I I don't know if I looped you into this, but I watched a movie on Netflix called House of Dynamite. I don't know if I made you watch this, and I thought it was one of the best, most nerve-wracking movies I've seen in years.
Terrifying.
It gave me such bad anxiety. I had to stop and go to the bathroom several times. It's Rebecca Ferguson, Idris Elba, some other actors. They're all great. Directed by the woman who did Zero Dark 30 and Hurt Locker. Yep. See, and I got all you guys to watch it. I also got everybody at work to watch it. And there's kind of two camps. People really like it and they agree it's nerve-wracking, or people hate it because of the ending.
Yeah.
And without spoiling any of it, I want to say that the point of that movie is not the ending.
Right.
The point of the movie, the thesis of that movie is what happens if this scenario happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about a nuclear missile is detected, and it's going to hit Chicago in half hour, 20 minutes, whatever it is. And it's kind of told in three chunks, and they all kind of start at 0 and go down to, they start at 20, go down to 0. And you kind of see it from different point of views. And I thought it was absolutely edge of your seat, fantastic, loved everything about it. And the fact that the ending is what it is does not change my opinion of that movie at all, because I think the process of, holy shit, this is happening. There's these different government agencies. How does everybody react? Was so good that I think everybody should watch this movie.
We for October, my wife and I watched like a horror movie every week, or at least spooky movie, if you will. Mm-hmm. And we included, because you were just blowing up the chat about it.
I was
like, let's throw this in there, and it was, of all the movies we watched, that was the scariest movie.
For sure.
Of all of them.
Too realistic, it's like
House of Dynamite on Netflix. So encourage everybody to watch that. And there's
I was going to say, you actually, I didn't even know it existed until you started talking about it. So I watched it, and I feel the same way you did. And I told some people at my job too. And one of the women's like, I can't believe you made me watch that. They didn't, the ending made me so mad. And I'm like, I know, but that's not the point, And it was really funny. But
there's a book that it does not officially tie in, but it's called Nuclear War Scenario. Mm-hmm. Just came out, and it's kind of along the same lines, a realistic look based on our military and diplomacy, what would happen in nuclear war. So if you read House Dynamite, you want more of that sort of thing. This book, Nuclear War Scenario, I cannot recommend enough as well.
So figuring out what my problem is as an adult, which is ADHD, makes a lot more sense. But it's, you just take it day by day. So I haven't been playing as many games lately. Mostly, if I've done anything, it's been failing to play more than 15 minutes of anything in VR because of motion sickness.
Oh, wow.
But other than that, we're mostly just sitting around, watching shows and kind of blasting through stuff. And that's because I took on crocheting, and I've been making a huge 8x6 blanket for the first time. So that's enough that I can sit in the couch and do that while watching shows and stuff. And during that time, I'm going to share pictures soon because it's quite a thing.
Pat made me a Snoopy.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. During that time, we've gone through watching several series, and I want to recommend just putting that out there, that Ken Burns' The National Parks, America's Greatest Idea, I think.
Yes,
is the subtitle. It should be required viewing. I mean, I can't mandate that, but it's very good. And somewhat related as a PSA, tonight, which is November 16th, Ken Burns, his American Revolution documentary premieres tonight, and it's going to be running all week. And it's another 12 hours of documentary, which I cannot wait to watch. But other than that, I decided to finally watch the Netflix Witcher series, so I'm kind of working through that. I'm not very.
Oh yeah, what do you think?
It's okay. It tonally, it's pretty similar to the games. So as much as I've played them,
the author seems like the crankiest dude in the fucking world.
Yeah, I think he hates everything.
Did he approve or disapprove the TV series? I know he hates the games, right?
He hates the games, and
Okay.
like has said like there's some interpretation that the CD Projekt Red took that completely ruins something. He is very, very protective of that, but I think he's at least consulted to some extent for the show, but I doubt he's really involved at all because I don't think he comes out in public much.
All right, so that will bring us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Once again, our next episode will be Blood, Sweat, and Pixels by Jason Scheuer. Like, subscribe, email, do all that fun stuff. And we'll see you next time. Bye.